I am selling my Rhett Shull Granville Port City Amps amplifier, and I'm going to tell you why in this video, but before I do, I have to explain a bit of context, and I think if you're also trying to pick your own gear, if you're trying to decide between analog and digital, all of this stuff, I'm pretty sure this story is going to help you, even though we are not in the same situation. First thing, Rhett Shull, Rick Beato, RJ Ronquillo, Robert Baker, what do all of these guys have in common? Well, obviously they're all on YouTube and they're all amazing musicians and very successful. I look up to all of them and hopefully I'll be successful like them one day. But when you look at their videos, you look at their setup, one thing they all have in common is a lot of space. And one thing I learned, and one of the reasons why I'm quitting the analog experiment, is because doing these videos takes a lot more space than I realized and a lot more space than I actually have. And that's something that I really didn't consider when I was planning this series. So although I think I do a great job of making this room look so big and fancy and spacious, the truth of the matter is, from my guitar rack on my right side to the end of the room over here, that's really all the space that I have. We're talking about 6 feet of space across. And then from my desk right here to the backdrop behind me, there's only 3.5 feet of space. So I'm working with an environment that is 6 feet by 3.5 feet. And that's all the space I have to show things on camera. So as I go through this next bit here, understand a few things. Space, also price, and also the difficulty of making all of these things work together. So we started with the Rhett Shull Signature Amp by Port City Amps. That amp sounds great. I'm very happy with my purchase there. Fine. Well, of course, to hear the amplifier, we need to get a speaker. Already, just the speaker and the amp takes up the entire space to my left, and it makes it impossible for me to actually walk into this area to do my work. And so I figured out that if I put the whole amp and speaker on a dolly, I could roll it in and out of the way, and I can use it when I needed to use it and not use it when I didn't use it. So now we're adding another level of complexity to the situation. I have to wheel the amp in and out when I want to use it, but fine, no big deal there. As I was using the amp, I realized that I like the way it sounds better at a louder volume. And I can't get it to the volume I need it to be for me personally in this room, so I needed to do what? Go out and buy an amp attenuator. So I bought an amp attenuator. You didn't see the first one I bought, but I bought it. I was using it in the room. It sounded great. But then I realized that I'm going to, of course, need to use reverbs and delays and all of that stuff, but the amplifier doesn't have an FX loop. So I realized that the attenuator that I was currently using wasn't the right one, so I had to return that attenuator. I bought a different one, the Boss Swath, which you've seen, and that has an attenuator which solves the attenuation issue, and it also has an FX loop, which is fantastic. But now we're talking about another expensive piece of kit on top of the amplifier and on top of the speaker cabinet. Now, the next issue I ran into, of course, was that I need to record the amplifier, and if I'm going to be doing things purely analog like I wanted to, I need a microphone and a mic stand. So now I have this microphone and stand that's taking up even more space in the room. If you go back and listen to that video, you'll notice that it doesn't actually sound that good, and I feel bad. I might even take the video down because the way I recorded it doesn't do the amp justice, and that's because there is a ton of hum going on in the video. And I know everyone in the comments is going to say, get a power conditioner, get this hum diffuser, whatever. Listen, I've lived here for a long time. I've tried every way to get clean power out of these walls. I am never getting clean power out of these walls. The hum is just going to be a thing. Really, really frustrating, but okay, let's just deal with it. We're going to record with the hum. Well, whenever you're recording with a microphone, you also have to sync it with the video. So I'm talking with one microphone, which is right here. And then on top of that, I also have to use a different microphone to mic the amp, sync them up later, which is another level of complexity. Also, of course, you need to mic the amp the right way, mic it consistently, all of that stuff. Well, here's the next thing. Editor Andre here. So I noticed that the video is about to divulge into what appears to be a rant about how hard it is to make YouTube videos, but let's make a deal right now. If you give the video a like right now, I promise I'll reshoot some stuff, and at the end of the video, I'll tie this all back into what it's supposed to be about, which is your needs about buying gear, recording music, and all of that stuff. Where I'm living is not, again, something that I can control. It's very loud outside often. It's very loud upstairs and next door fairly often. Sometimes when I'm recording a video, I have to stop and let the sound of the water going pass, or I have to stop and wait for the toilet flushing sound to pass. And in the covered area, I have a carpet. Below that, I have cardboard box. You hear that? See, if this was a usual video, I would pause at this point. It's easy to manage when I'm just recording audio, talking to you with my voice. But when I'm recording an amp 2, I need to have even more time for perfect silence, which was also becoming an issue. Okay, let's continue. To be completely honest, the floor here, as some of you have commented, isn't great. So wheeling the amplifier and the speaker and the attenuator in and out from this area has continued to ruin the floor further. And now the dolly is like skipping and getting caught on the floor and all of that stuff. So that's even more frustrating, but fine, that's all working. So then we get to the point of actually using the pedals. And I was lucky enough to contact a few companies and they were agreed to send me some pedals to borrow to try out with the amplifier. Well, when you buy a bunch of stuff, you have a bunch of packages, and when you're borrowing them, you have to return them. So now my hallway is filled with packages that I need to find time to pack and resend to the companies when I'm done testing this stuff. In addition to all of the pedals, you now need a way to power all the pedals. So I buy another thing, which is a power brick of some sort, and that's working fine, but then you have cables from the power brick to all of the pedals. And on top of that, some of the pedals that I got, for some reason, even though they say they're supposed to work with the wattage that the power brick says it's giving, they weren't working. So I have to get a different power solution for certain pedals that just weren't working with that one. So now we have a floor filled with different power bricks and powering cables. Then, of course, all of the patch cables between the different pedals. Well, you can't just plug a pedal into a pedal into a pedal unless it has true bypass, because you're going to lose all of your tone along the way. And so I started to think about, well, maybe I have to get a switcher or a different way to route these pedals that's not going to... Listen, I don't know all the technical terms for a lot of this stuff. Like I told you, I've been a digital person for most of my life, but all of the pedals, the patch cables, the order, finding a way to not lose tone, the dirty power from the wall through the amp, the dirty power for the pedals, all of this stuff became so frustrating to deal with, not to mention the price. And then, of course, on top of all of that stuff, you have to worry about actually filming the video. So I needed a new camera, so I got a second camera to record the amplifier or to record the pedals. But the thing about the second camera is that it needs to be a wide angle lens and an adjustable wide angle lens, so I don't have to move the camera too much. Adjustable wide angle lenses are very expensive, but fine. Adjustable wide angle lenses also don't do great in low light situations, and this is considered a low light situation, so now I'm having to reconsider the whole lighting of the video. I decided, man, this is all getting way too complicated, and I figured out that, oh my god, they make amplifiers that have a built-in direct output that you can go into an interface with. And so I looked into getting a Rev amp. And so I thought that's going to be the solution. I'll get the Rev amp, connect all the pedals somehow. I won't use the microphone. Instead, I'll just go direct from the amp into the interface with its captor system thing. And that will solve all the issues. Well, I had a very limited amount of time to do all of this, and the Rev amp came damaged. And I didn't even mention this before, but I had purchased a different amp before that also came damaged. So I also learned that when you're sending amplifiers through the mail that are tube amps, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to be damaged. You're going to have to return it and get a different one and all of that stuff. So long story short, and I guess I didn't make the story that short, this has been incredibly frustrating, incredibly expensive. And some point in the last 2 days, I just realized, oh yeah, the reason I use digital gear, the reason I use my Axe effects is because I don't have to worry about any of this stuff when I'm using the Axe effects. And it's cheaper than all of this stuff, and it has even more features than all of this stuff offered me. So conclusion to the analog experiment. Analog gear makes me so frustrated that I can't even finish this experiment for the purposes of YouTube. It's too expensive. It's too time consuming. It takes up too much space that I don't have. And it takes up too much space with the boxes that are over there. And some of it's fragile and it's just too much. I'm quitting the analog experiment. It is over. I am returning to my digital only Axe-Fx rig. I'm also going to be reviewing viewers' guitars, and some people have agreed to send me their instruments. It's going to be really fun. If you have an instrument that you would like to send to me, it's unique, it's weird, it's just close to your heart, send me an email at andrefloodmusic@gmail.com, and we'll see if we can make that happen. New day, fresh mind, let's wrap things up. You'll remember that I started the video by talking about some of my own personal inspirations. Rhett Shull, Rick Beato, RJ Ronquillo, Robert Baker. What do all of these guys have in common? Well, obviously they're all on YouTube and they're all amazing musicians and very successful. I look up to all of them and hopefully I'll be successful like them one day. Now, it doesn't matter who your inspirations are, be it YouTubers or really famous recording artists from the past. Take inspiration from them. Inspiration is amazing, but then focus on their success, not trying to replicate their exact method. So if you heard an old record, you don't have to go out and try to find that tape deck. Just take the sound and try to use your own gear to replicate that sound. And it's also really important to be honest with yourself. If you like buying pedals and amps and that's part of your hobby, then that's fantastic. It makes you happy, keep doing it. But if you think you're going to get into this whole buying pedals, buying amps thing because it's going to make you somehow a better musician, it's going to be a more efficient way to get your music goals achieved, that is a trap, I can promise you. Because you're going to start buying pedals, you're going to start trading pedals, you're going to start looking at more pedal reviews. And I know this for a fact, there's a bunch of you who are not active on your Reverb stores. I can guarantee a bunch of you have stuff you say you're going to put on Reverb soon that you just haven't done yet. Other people put things on Reverb and then they don't pay attention to actually monitoring their stores. So I'll send them a message trying to buy something and I'll be like, hey, I have a question. They won't reply for 3 days. By that time, I've already bought something else. And so all of this takes up time, and all of this time can be better spent actually mastering your equipment you have, actually writing music, playing music. Again, if that's your goal. If your goal is to buy pedals, build pedal boards for your hobby, that's totally fine. Just be honest about what your goal really is. But I will say that if you are on a budget, if you're in a small space, if you don't want to spend a lot of time working with pedals, then I really think that an all digital rig can be amazing. And it doesn't have to be a fancy, expensive Axe-Fx. Going direct into Logic has a lot of different options. GarageBand even has a lot of options. We live in a great time where you don't need to spend a lot of money to get a great sound. The most important thing is mastering whatever gear you do have. If you can master how to use what comes free on GarageBand, you will get an amazing sound. You will convince people that your sound is much more fancy and much more expensive than it really is. The last thing I'll say is that although I am primarily using the Axe-Fx, I am going to spend some time buying and trying specific pedals for a few things that I want to do, because the Axe-Fx does work well with pedals, and there are certain things that certain pedals can do that is easier to just buy and use in consort with the Axe-Fx rather than trying to invent a way to do it on the Axe-Fx. So I still will be using some pedals. I still will show them on the channel when I get them, but it's going to be a hybrid digital analog kind of a thing. By the way, I'm Andre Flood, and I'll talk to you soon.